Good morning and happy Friday. Hope everyone had a good week. Lots of interesting news out there. Austin, how are you doing today?
Doing pretty good, Andrew. Can't complain. It's been a nice week. The weather's finally turning out here, so things are looking up.
I'm glad that we organized our wardrobe today. We both got our black sweaters on.
At least we have the different backgrounds, so we're not completely in sync here. But yeah, it's a good.
We'll let viewers decide who wore it best. So
yeah, we can make a poll at the end of this.
Today we entitled the show FOMO because it's a mindset that's very prevalent. It's always been there. It's just right now it's been hyper accentuated, and that fear of missing out. We also want to touch on the fact that we forgot to talk about our minimum global tax last time. So we'll touch on that as well. But let's start off with FOMO. There's a bunch of stuff that's all interconnected, and we'll wind it back all together at the end.
Yeah, so I mean, the essential premise of the idea, which I think everyone understands, is the fear of missing out on something. And you can take that to the most basic level of, you're stuck at home or stuck at work doing something, and your friends are all out having a good time, and you feel the sense of dread because, well, they're having fun without you. Now, I think the most accurate application of that, if you take it to finance and to the stock market, is probably the recent Bitcoin craze. And you take it back to meme stock craze before that. But people jumping in on these things and sometimes throwing their entire life savings, at Bitcoin or Ethereum or at GameStop or AMC or something like that, because they're so terrified that they might miss out on this giant wave of, they're hearing all these success stories of, oh my God, this person's up, $10 million but investing in GameStop. Like, I'm going to miss out on this if I don't jump on the ship right now, when in many situations you've probably already missed the boat if you're finding out about it now and you're hearing about everyone's wins already.
Yes. Yeah. Well, there's a lot there. And what's really interesting psychologically is that it's been hyper accentuated because we have social media. So I'm on Wall Street Bets Facebook group and whatnot, and they have amazing funny memes. I mean, if I want to laugh, I'm in there. It's really pretty funny. So there's a community. It's quite funny, even though some of these people are doing absurdly, terribly bad idea things, and you want to stop them. You can't. I mean, it's very tough. They've got their mind made up, and once again, it's that whole meme stock compared to a real stock, and what's this, what's that, and today, when you're talking especially about FOMO and the fear of missing out, it is in regards to it's a difference between, like, say, sports betting and investment, which there's very similar type of approaches. Is that if you're just going to follow, LeBron James and just say, I'll just bet my money on any game he's in and whatever team he's with, that's a strategy. It's not the best strategy, but that's a strategy you could choose. And it's just the same as, I'll just wait to see what Elon Musk talks about. He'll tweet about it and I'll invest that way. And you might have some success at the beginning. You might get lucky. That's a strategy. It won't work for very long, but I guess it is technically a strategy. And we have to harness people that there is this massive excitement and interest in investing and making money and putting capital to use. And if we can harness that into better areas, I would say, and I don't say right or wrong, there's not a right or wrong, but hopefully better for community, for the nation, for countries, then that has a chance of affecting your life in a very positive way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something you have to be kind of careful with, because you don't want to get, like you were saying, kind of carried away. You can have a valid strategy, you can have a valid approach, but you don't want to get kind of lost in the noise and the hype, which is something we talk about a lot. We're always consistently kind of making that point, but it's important for people to understand that. And now you go back to the sports analogy, which I think you can expand on that a little bit too. So LeBron James, let's use that as an example. I think he's won 4 championships in his career. So you could have bet on him every year in his 15 or however many year career it is, but he's only won the championship 4 times. So 11 times that bet's actually not hitting. That's not really a successful strategy. I think that you can translate that over to the Elon Musk thing as well. Yes. You can make some plays with Elon that'll do very well. If you jumped on the Tesla train this time 2 years ago, even, you are sitting and holding a pretty nice stack of cash right now. If you threw let's say $100,000 at Tesla, 2 years ago. You got a lot of cash in Tesla stock right now. But if you threw it in Dogecoin, 4 months ago, not really the exact same situation that you're looking at. Or if you threw it in Bitcoin back before Elon changed his mind on Bitcoin, same thing.
Yeah. Yes. And you can see how volatile these markets are. And when they're influenced by personality and not by any economic factor, that's troublesome and very worrisome. And that kind of highlights a conversation we had way back a couple of weeks ago about what do you call it, the book The Extraordinary Delusions and Madness of Crowds.
Yeah.
Where it highlights parts in periods of times that when we look back, we laugh at and go, like a tulip mania. Why would you spend so much money on a tulip? Well, why would you spend so much money on a virtual coin that will more than likely never exist in 5 years? And I'm not saying Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is an asset that's being recognized by people, but there's thousands of coins out there that have no legitimate use and never will. But there's a hype train, and maybe you can make some money on it. Maybe you can't. I mean, that's why I'm not really interested in it. So this whole fear of missing out, it lends itself because you're going to hear the stories of someone who's like, I put $100 into XYZ coin, 5-8 years ago, and now I've got X dollars. And it's like, well, that's fine. You could do that with a ton of things. Fire and forget for 10 years. Most of them will be complete failures, especially if you put no work into it. And maybe you get lucky with one. There's a better strategy to that. And that's the difference between that just wildly speculating because you're in a mania and in a panic and in a very volatile time, compared to sitting back, taking in all the information and trying to think critically and reasonably, and not chasing after, not being terrified of losing, and not chasing after winners. Because once you have that fear of missing out, you're not thinking clearly. Your mind is now, it's moved off. You're probably straight away, if you had a plan, you've moved away from it. And you see us all the time as someone goes, I'm doing an option swing trade or a momentum trade or this or that, and then they change halfway through. I'm now a fundamental investor looking at this and this. No, if you went off on one plan and deviated, you're probably going to lose your funds. Now, there's lots of ways to make money, and we talked about this before, but have a thesis, have a strategy, have a plan, and then that removes a lot of the feelings, because that's what you need to do, is remove the feelings so that we can think logically and reasoned about it. And it's an important conversation to have, because it's that fear of missing out. If you harness it appropriately and let people know that, yes, taking your time and money is the most valuable, like capital, your energy, your wealth, whatever it is, if it's $500 or $500,000 or $5 million, and applying it is an important thing that we do in life. And that helps to build our community, our family, whatever it is. Think longer term. Think about what's happening. There's no free lunch. There's no easy money. And that's a larger conversation that's being had, but it isn't just that simple. And if you are just putting it all on betting 19 red, then, whatever.
I hope it eventually hits for you, but
yes, then buy a lottery ticket as well. It's people still buy that despite it mathematically being utterly insane to do so. This is going to be a bit mean, but I've heard mathematicians say it's a tax on people who don't know math. Yeah. That's all that lottery is. So, but we fall for stories, and that's a bigger conversation. Is our imaginations and the way that most human beings, they fall for narrative and for story than any kind of facts. And this is why we see media so influential, Netflix so influential, movies so influential, is that we see people literally thinking that what they saw on TV or a movie or on some media show, that's real life. It's an indication of real life. And you have to remind them that no, that's a movie. That's not real life. That's not history. It's not, you have to go read history and go analyze it. But it's a reflection of our time. Same with investing and same with stocks is, do you know what the company does? Do you know who's involved with the company? This is what you need to know. Then when you know the team and the money, the management, the projects they've done before, you can feel much more comfortable if they're on track. If you don't know if they're on track, you don't know what they've done in the past, you don't know what the milestones are, then, where are you?
Which it should be said is an extremely difficult thing to do. Like, we are naturally, emotional beings, right? So stripping that emotion away is a difficult thing to wrap your head around. I even catch myself still getting emotionally tied into stocks too. You might remember me talking to you, about that the score media in gaming, which I loved as a big play, tied into the gambling thing too, because it was like, gambling's going to be legalized in Canada. It's going to be awesome. This is going to be the Canadian version of pen gaming. I was all about it, and then I'm almost in tears when the stock's falling through the floor.
Sure.
I go, what? Why? This is so good,
Well, especially when they have personalities on it too, and you're like, I like the commentators, I like what they're doing. And this is, part of the thing I like about some of these meme stocks and the FOMO kind of thing with the, maybe not AMC, but some of these other ones where that the strategy for the core wasn't about making money. It isn't necessarily about the stock. It's about, we want to punish the short sellers because what they did to my family. And that I like that a lot.
But now you're seeing it being replicated in ways that it's not really going to work, like the massive jump that Wendy's had earlier in the week, where it went up like 25% in 2 days. But the percentage of shares that are actually shorted for Wendy's is less than 5%. So it's not the same situation. Now it's just people trying to recreate that same thing by looking at it and saying, well, but the shares are shorted. It's like, okay, but not to the tune of 118% or whatever GameStop was shorted.
Well, and also you're tangling with exceptionally bright people that, you got them once, but they are embedded, whether it's other hedge funds are embedded within Reddit and all these other communities. They are embedded, lots of different people are embedded in 4chan and all these other channels, encouraging people to do certain things, to say certain things, to think certain things. You have the same on Reddit is you have hedge fund managers and people working there to encourage, because now it's become a strategy. And I liken it to is if you walk into Vegas and you think you're kind of good at poker and you're sitting down at the table and you don't know who you're playing against, and you don't know that maybe they know each other, you're in trouble. Yeah. I mean, if you don't know what you're walking into, who's the sucker at the table, it's you. If you don't know who the sucker is, you're the sucker.
It's 100% you.
So it's definitely you. So you have to realize that we live in a day where there isn't, especially in very wealthy areas, it's not a lack of intelligence or knowledge that's going on. Yes, lots of people can be wrong and about bets here and there, but make no mistake, it's morphed and changed into something different. But we could keep on talking about that for on and on and on. And we do need to jump into the tax thing. And I'd like to come back to this as an ongoing conversation, because it's so important to harness people and to get them excited and to say, listen, where is money being pumped into? What is the infrastructure plan being set forward? What are all the big companies, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, Deutsche Bank, what are they all saying? Partly, and before we jump into the taxes, because it is kind of is relevant, we've talked about it briefly, is inflation. So we've seen that we're getting more alarm bells being raised about inflation, and I'd say recognizing that there's inflation, and that is something to be concerned about.
Yeah, I mean, it's to the point now where every major firm, every major bank is talking about how big of an issue this is going to be. And it's a simple type in how is inflation a problem into Google, and you will get 100 articles telling you about the kind of current situation we're in, regardless of kind of where you are in the world. Because most countries have gone through the exact same thing with the COVID shutdowns and the 0% interest rates and everything like that. So it's all going to end up coming to a head at some point. But it's not just because of COVID. It's because we've had a financial crisis in 2008 that was pretty much just pushed off, that we never actually really dealt with the repercussions of. It was more so just, tried to stuff out the fire before it really got out of control. And all that did is cause it to still be smoldering and simmering under there and ready to ignite again. And I think that's probably something that we're going to run into sooner rather than later, I believe.
Yeah, and if you reach out to us, we'll send you a little graph that shows the printing of money, say in the last 150 years in the U.S., and you'll be shocked and horrified by what that graph looks like. It's a shocking graph, and that'll give you a sense as to what it's looked like for the last 2 decades. Say, you can't, once again, people will look back 50 years from now and go, "Did no one recognize what was going on?" Yes, a lot of people do recognize what's going on, and this ties in nicely to talk about the G7 meeting and this setting a standard of a 15% global minimum federal tax, which I would say most people say, okay, that sounds fair. Like, this is good. Can you actually implement something that forces companies to pay their fair share? Which this is a loaded conversation on lots of fronts. But I would think that everyone would say, listen, how is it possible that like FANG stocks pay basically no tax, or I think on average maybe 3% or something like that? How is it possible that Bezos, Musk, Soros, all of these people don't pay tax? How is it that these big globalist companies have the means to do this? And my answer is always, the biggest obstacle to you making money isn't necessarily finding a good investment, it's that you're paying tax.
Yeah.
Like, if that's your number one thing. If you're constantly being dinged 30%, 40%, you can't have the growth. Like, it's not going to happen. So you need to create situations, which these companies have done, where you don't have to. And it's a whole economy on its own of people working to counteract whatever measures have been put in place by a government to try to get taxes. And it has to come to an end. I mean, if you're Jeff Bezos, you live in the US, there's an intricate network of setting up offshore accounts here that, the asset quote or intellectual properties may be held in Ireland. It only has to pay 7%, and this pays over here, and you blend it out. Plus, then you get all these grants because you're maybe setting up a factory. There's all sorts of incentives and write-offs and this and that and everything else, because the theory is, you're bringing jobs to an area, so you'll get a big tax incentive for it. It's complicated, but at the end of the day, it's not very complicated. It isn't.
Well, yeah, and it's important to kind of stress the point too that like the average person isn't going to be able to do something like this, because the average person doesn't have the money to spend that on what Bezos spends on accounting in a year. Because I guarantee you, the accountants that he has on his payroll, their hourly bill is not $150 an hour. It's probably to the tune of $1,200 or $1,500 an hour. And it's because these guys are good at what they do. I mean, I saw a story the other day that was coming out. That Bezos actually 2 times in the last decade has been able to claim child tax credits because he's lost more money than he's made in investments in that year. Sure. And, call it
I feel for him.
Accounting, call it manipulation. Oh, I feel terrible for him. I feel really bad. His kids must really need that. But that's what it boils down to at the end of the day, is that you and I might not want to pay the tax rate that we do, but we don't have the accounting wizards that Jeff Bezos does. If those guys are listening and you want to help a brother out, give me a call. I would love to have you guys help. But no, other than that,
there's a bigger problem too, because it shows that there's no community, and people know that. Like, it used to be that if you are, say we're Irish. If you're Irish, you pay tax in Ireland, and the money is hopefully being used for the betterment of your people. And because if you have the same culture, same heritage, same everything, you share the same language, it's the betterment. Hopefully it's going in the right direction. Then the argument was, well, government tends to not be the best arbiter of money. It's rarely utilized very well. So you begrudgingly give it. And then as the world gets bigger and bigger and bigger, you start to realize, I'm now giving money that maybe not going towards any of the causes or the people I'd like it to. I may not even agree with the stance of the government. And if someone starts doing exceptionally well, they're very well educated, they do a lot of reading, they may feel this sense of entitlement that, wait a second, why would I give money to a government when I'm doing much better at it? Why don't I choose the ventures that I want, which is what you have with all these charity, schemes that are set up in the States, which are schemes. They're just tax efficient investments in the U.S., where very, very wealthy can avoid a lot of taxes by investing in their causes that they like. Mm-hmm. And their argument would be, I'm better at this than you are. and I can make a difference. And they do. A lot of them do very positive work. It just happens to make them a lot of money as well. And it's hard for that mindset of someone who's that successful and that smart. These aren't stupid people. To go, why would I give my intellectual capital and all the money and work I've done to people that are going to be less efficient, less useful, less credible than I am? And I can understand that argument. I mean, it does kind of make sense, but at the same time, you go, but you're not paying anything. You're not giving back in any way. And what you are giving back when you say I'm setting up an Amazon, what do you call it, warehouse? Like, this is not fun work. If you want to talk about actual labor, hardcore labor in a warehouse, delivering goods, this is not a dream job for anyone. Like, it's not fun. It's hard work. And it's not like they're delivering, tons of great H&R jobs about, something that's fun to do, setting up parties and doing events. This is hard manual labor in a big warehouse.
But you're feeling fulfilled while you do it, though.
Well, of course, you're a fulfillment executive.
Centers.
Yeah, you're a fulfillment executive at a center. Yeah, and this is the way the world is set up. And this, once again, is totally devoid of any kind of politics. They'll spin it one way or another, depending on if you're Republican, if you're a Democrat, left, right, whatever. It makes no difference. It's the same thing, which way you spin it. And unfortunately, when you have it that it's a global economy and no one looks at that they have a community of any kind or any obligation or even necessary emotional tie to where they happen to live, well, this is what you get. And that's a mistake. And this is a criticism I have of this push forward by a lot of leaders of, well, there's no such thing as country. It's just a concept. It's just an idea. We're just a bunch of people where people reside. And it's like, if that's the case, or some abstraction of, I identify as something that I'm not. Well, that's a little bit contrived. So interesting times we live in. I guess that's the state of it. Should there be a tax? Should people be able to avoid tax? No, you should have to pay your fair share. And that is a really fun conversation to have as well, because if you look at someone who says, well, if I pay 15%, I make $10,000 a year, that's not a lot, but that's a lot to live. Like, that's a chunk for your bare necessities. The flip side is, if I make $100 million a year and I'm paying $15 million, that's way more than the fair share of the average person in dollar value. So the argument goes from percentage to dollar value, what's fair. And that argument can go back and forth for quite some time. And I think at the end of the day, what I'm saying is that people have to pay something. You have to pay. Yeah. Take out government, take out this, take out that. There has to be something, and it has to go back to the place that you started or that you're building. There has to be something to give back to the people, the community there, because otherwise it's this race to the top and the bottom, which we have now, which I understand why most, especially younger people, are pissed off, is they've seen this concentration of wealth being shoved up into the 0.1%. Like when I was young, it was like the top 1% or 2%. They're wiping out the upper middle class as well. It's this ultra rich, and most of them, they have no ties to anywhere. They're like, I'm a human of the world kind of idea. And if that's the case, then why pay tax anywhere?
Yeah, and then you're going to run into this issue as well. But okay, in theory, having a global tax on like a corporate tax rate or an income tax rate, however they want to set it up, in theory, sure, it's a good idea, because you're going to stop the sort of arms race of like, well, it's cheaper to do business here. You even see that in Canada as an example. It's technically cheaper to do business in Alberta than it is in BC. Corporations pay less tax in Alberta than they do in BC, but that doesn't mean people aren't going to find a way around it. If you're setting up a company in BC or Ontario, maybe you just register it federally rather than provincially. Or you just, if you have the money to do it, well, okay, why don't we just rent an office in Alberta and run our company out of there? People are doing the same thing on a global scale. Yeah. So the idea that like, okay, it's going to all balance that out is great in theory of like, okay, well, no matter where you go, it's going to be 15%. Sure, but you already have places where it's higher than 15%. and companies, billionaires, individuals, whoever, are still finding ways
They'll
to
still
beat
find a
that
way around
system.
it.
That's not going to change just because you're saying, oh, well, we're going to make it fair across the board.
No.
That's not, you have to get to the root of solving that problem. And I don't want to be the person solving that problem. It's an extremely complex problem to have to solve as well. So,
when you're talking about like a real offshore haven too, that's say a tourist destination in like the Caribbean, they're just going to flat out say no. And unless you threaten them, which they may, if it's just G7 countries, well, whatever. I mean, you can set whatever you want. People still get around it. It's a nice gesture. It's a nice thing to meet about. But there's always going to be a country, and that they have the right to say, no, we're not interested in you telling me how to run my country. This is our land. We will run it the way we see fit. And there's an argument to that. And when you have that, and the problem with, the world is that this filled with human people that have very different ideas of how they'd like the world to be. If you have a G7 or G20 come in, or the UN come in and say, we're going to force you to do certain thing, and a country says, no, that's not how we operate here. Mm-hmm. Then you go, okay, we're in a bit of a conundrum now.
Yeah, or you might use something as simple as saying, and I'll use China as an example because everyone loves to pick on China, but you might say, okay, yeah, sure, we'll do the 15% thing for other companies, but we're going to create massive incentives for Chinese companies that are going to help them, stay under this. If you're a Chinese company doing business in China, well, then you can claim this credit. We can work it out. We can, your tax rate's going to whittle back down to 7 or 8%, no problem. I use China as an example. I don't know what the corporate tax rate is in China. It might be much crazier than 15%. Who knows? But that's just an example. They might say, and what's to stop any country from doing that? You're not going to see Canada or the United States do that because, unfortunately, the governments that we have in the Western world don't like to act in their own self-interest 99% of the time. But you would start to see other countries doing that, and I wouldn't blame them for setting it up that way either.
And the flip side of the argument is that when you have a cap and you say they were able to manage to cap everyone and actually do it successfully, is that, okay, great. You've now set a standard that you allowed everyone prior to not pay tax, to accelerate their wealth, to now remain ahead of everyone that would take you infinitely longer to even come close. Not that I don't think anyone really wants to really actually be a billionaire. It's kind of gross. It's a big number of money. That's my personal opinion. Maybe there's people that would love to do that.
I'll settle for $999 million. I'll be good.
Okay, there you go. There's a number where everyone would be quite happy and you'd live a great life and it would be wonderful. So most people aren't really concerned with being an actual Bezos or Elon Musk. And to be honest, I wouldn't want it because their schedule in a day, it's like they're every 5 minutes is accounted for. And to me, I mean, I like to veg out too much that I'd feel guilty that, oh my God, I just wasted 15 minutes watching music videos. It's not for me. It's not for me. But if you do say to someone, I've made a ton of money, I haven't had to pay any tax, but we're going to be fair and we'll start paying now once I have money, that's very different than someone coming up going, well, how come you got all that free growth? How come you got to escalate your wealth so rapidly and you were allowed to do it? And now you're saying, fine, now we'll cap everyone. And that's a way for and especially with printing money, it's a way to cap your upper elite ruling class and then keep down the rest by limiting them. So anyways, we could go back and forth on this, back and forth. But that's what's interesting about it is when you look at it critically from different points of view, is that you see it isn't just as simple as just saying everyone should pay this and that's just the end of the story. There's a lot more to it, and we certainly haven't done it justice, the level of conversation, because each one of those is a textbook on its own. But at least it's an interesting conversation for people to get excited about, to kind of see how all this matches up in this chaotic, crazy time where fear and greed are ruling. There's tons of fear out there. We don't need to mention that. That's obvious. But there is massive greed as well that's happening because this is a period of time where it's the biggest wealth transfer that's ever been conceived of that's been going on. And make no mistake, COVID has not been terrible for everyone. It has made billionaires out of some. Yeah. And people, that's going to do nothing good when the dust settles 2-3 years from now and more younger people start to realize what just happened. So our job here is to try to wake people up, shake them a bit, and try to get them to focus not on the noise. And I say it a lot, but don't focus on the noise. Turn off most of the stuff. There's lots of sources of people you can go look to that are doing interesting things, that are focused on interesting projects. Not just me. There's lots of great people, and we want to encourage people to go out, seek them out, watch the different shows, check out things on YouTube, and to see, listen, what am I really passionate about? Where do I see the world going? How do I want the world to look? And how can I place money and focus that, my interest, my time, my curiosity, and my funds, whether it's $200 or $2 million, into things I'm actually passionate about. And then when you're invested, like with your time, your intellectual curiosity, you're going to want that investment into the right people, into the right projects that are like-minded, because even if it doesn't work out, you felt like you're in something together. And this is why a lot of these meme crowd, AMC and whatnot, it's just as much fun for them to do these silly memes and crazy investment things because they feel like they're part of a community. And part of that, sometimes that's good enough for some people.
And it might not even be a necessarily valid thing, because you might be in there making memes with someone who already sold their shares back in March.
Yeah.
You don't actually know, but just because there's that sense of community and the sense of this common goal, it works so well. And we've seen GameStop surge up, and maybe you will jump into that next week if it continues on its trend. Maybe I'll take us through another little dive of what's going on with GameStop and
yes. Tell me. Yeah, I haven't looked at it. Yes, definitely want to know. I don't know what's happening over there. So
absolutely. Well, I'll put some stuff together and we'll jump back into that to dissect exactly what's happened, because it's an important conversation to have.
Yeah.
But it's also important to hammer home the points that we continue to hammer home, and that's, invest in something you care about. Look past the noise, look past the hype and the hysteria of the modern stock market, and focus your energy into finding real growth potential, real stories, real companies with great management teams. And that's what we're going to keep doing here.
Absolutely. Well said. Thanks so much, Austin. Have a great weekend.
Hey, always a great time talking to you, Andrew. Take care.
Bye, everyone.